on pro-life issues. So there's a concern there of, even if it's a transactional relationship, can you count on President Trump to hold up his end of the transaction? But I think what's really happening is Catholics are being inspired by our own Pope to recognize that the breadth of Catholic issues is a lot more than just abortion, and certainly that it also includes war and peace, and the needs of the people who are being devastated by this war. And so, the Pope is calling us to pay attention to that. And I think every time that President Trump attacks the Pope over that, it just highlights how deeply that call for peace is rooted in the gospel.
All right. Thank you so much, Father Sam Sawyer, Inez de la Cuetara, and Laura Barone Lopez. Thank you for starting us off. Up next, all quiet along the Strait of Hormuz, and no answers from the White House on how long this stalemate will last. Plus, Democrats are back on defense in the national redistricting battle, with red states now leading the charge. And later, what's inside the purported Epstein suicide note made public by a federal judge? We're back in 90 seconds. Stay right there.
Whenever it comes to the Pope, this is my personal opinion about his opinion about peace and war. And you can take it for what it's worth. The Heavenly Father in the Holy Kingdom has always desired for everybody to get along and for there to be peace. It was the Luciferian Lucifer that decided to make war with the Heavenly Kingdom. Because that occurred in the eyes of the Father, there has to be accountability. There has to be responsibility in being punished for doing that. Now, whenever the Pope before him opened up one of the portals pertaining to the indulgence law, even my son knew at that time that something was going on with the Catholics pertaining to giving them the indulgence of being able to basically do whatever they want to do, and as long as they keep giving their money to the Catholic Church, they'll still be accounted as being in the fold. Well, there's a lot more to believing in Christ other than giving money to the church. And as far as I'm concerned, the Pope isn't any different than, let's say, Billy Graham. He's a representative of the kingdom of God through Christ. And there's no doubt any and everybody should want peace rather than war. But whenever it comes a time to where you can't no longer negotiate with people pertaining to war, then sometimes it's declared as being fair or right in good having to take up the same type of power or struggle or means. In sometimes good people has to do bad things. I don't know how the president feels. I don't know how the Pope feels. I just know how I feel. And I believe that the Father is tired of the true born-again Christians of sitting back and sitting idly by and letting them become basically railroaded in the devil and the devil's people. That's where the Christians has to have enough backbone to stand up to know that, hey, according to the Bible, this is wrong. And according to the Bible, if you're not going to listen to us one way, then you'll listen to us in another.
As a result of what's inside this proposal that the US has put forward, and a lot of it is actually around Iran's nuclear program. There's some very kind of specific details in there around whether Iran can or cannot enrich uranium, whether the US actually takes control of that uranium as well. But then there's the whole crux of this proposal is that this conflict ends within the next 30 days, that they come to some form of conclusive ending to the war, and that the Strait of Hormuz fully opens, that Iran's sanctions that have been put on them by the US are unfrozen. But if the ceasefire is broken within the next 30 days, or there is no negotiation essentially between the two countries, then the US will carry out their aggression and continue their blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. So currently, the ball is now back in Iran's court. They have got the ball there to try and make the decision essentially, and what their response will be to this US proposal. I don't think that they will fully comply and agree with what the US has put on the table. They'll go back with their own options. And I think we're kind of in this bit of a state of abeyance right now, where the back and forth continues, and actually getting the two sides in the room together to have the discussions is the key goal, but it's looking very difficult in terms of getting there.
Meantime, nothing's really getting through the Strait of Hormuz. General McCaffrey, according to the Pentagon, more than 22,000 mariners are stranded on more than 1,500 commercial ships in the Persian Gulf right now. Will anything short of a comprehensive peace deal get that traffic moving?
Probably not. Both Mr. Trump and the Iranians have enormous economic and military arguments why they should stop fighting. I think the Iranians probably can't keep it up more than 60 to 90 days with the U.S. counter blockade. They're going to run out of money to pay the IRGC, among other things. And I think Mr. Trump's watching both his political and economic fortunes being grievously affected by this. That Operation Freedom was a test to see if the Iranians would blink and allow us to use minimal U.S. naval assets to break the Iranian blockade. It didn't work. That was a contested passage. Those were two destroyers with enormously courageous U.S. sailors, tremendous technology. It was an air-sea operation. They destroyed 6 Iranian fast boats. They managed to protect themselves from cruise missiles that were fired at them. But obviously, it will not allow us to unblock the Straits of Hormuz using a naval power. No naval ship should be in combat in the Persian Gulf in shallow waters, subject to air, sea, and mine attack. So what next? I think at the end of the day, both sides have to come to an agreement pretty rapidly. The patience of the American people is running out. The allies are outraged. Saudi Arabia apparently reacted very unfavorably to Operation Freedom, along with other Persian Gulf states. So Trump's stuck. He's got to go to diplomacy to get us out of this situation.
What you just described about those Navy ships that went through during the beginning of what was Project Freedom, it tells you everything you need to know about why commercial ships are so hesitant to proceed as well. Aaron, President Trump is now back to making threats, saying if Iran doesn't agree to this latest agreement that's been hashed out, or that they want to hash out, the bombing starts. Are threats like this effective at this point? Aaron, we can't hear you. Double check your mute button. Okay, let's see if we got Aaron. No such. Oh, we got you. Yay! Continue.
Well, look, the more kinetic attacks like we saw from February 28th to April 7th is basically, I think, wash, rinse, and repeat. I also think we have to stop talking about the quote-unquote deal. The Memorandum of Understanding is a ticket to get to the negotiating table. Once there, we're going to confront extraordinarily complicated issues. I agree with General McCaffrey. I think the Iranians want a way out. I think Trump wants a way out.
Okay, Aaron, unfortunately, your audio is gone once again. Let's see if we can work on that. In the meantime, I want to just push forward because Israel launched strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs for the first time since the ceasefire with Lebanon. And I want to go back to you, Inzamam. What more are we learning about this? Obviously, that's a fragile ceasefire, and it's connected to the broader ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a far push to call it a fragile ceasefire now, Anna, given that every single day since it was implemented, it's it's been broken by both sides, by the Israelis in particular, and also by Hezbollah inside of Lebanon. Those two entities have been fighting every single day. And over the last 24 hours, we saw Israel really ramp up their war inside of Lebanon. They specifically targeted the capital, Beirut, and killed more than 13 people, it's believed. That's what the health ministry inside Lebanon have said. They targeted neighborhoods, they targeted residential buildings, and as a result, more than 13 people have been killed. And then just in the last few hours as well, they've actually put out a further warning, dropping leaflets across some suburbs inside of Lebanon, telling people to evacuate from their homes because they will continue with their bombing. They say that they're targeting Hezbollah sites, and they're doing it as a result of Hezbollah initially breaking the ceasefire, but clearly very much so in that country which has been battered for many years now, the fighting very much continues. And as you mentioned, it's separate to the other ceasefire that's going on and the war in Iran. But what will be important is if the two sides do get to the negotiation table, and the US and Iran, then Lebanon is very much on the agenda. Iran have always said that any conclusive ending to this conflict has to also include Lebanon. Right now, Israel is using Lebanon really as their fighting zone throughout this war, since they can't target Iran, and the fighting very much is continuing there. So it will very much have to be part of a negotiation deal if we get that in the coming days, Anna.
General, roughly 400 people have been killed in Lebanon since the ceasefire. Israel has also killed more than 700 people in Gaza since that ceasefire was implemented, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, and maintains a large offensive presence militarily in both of these locations. I just wonder, historically, is it normal to see this many deaths in the hundreds so far into a ceasefire?
No, well, you know, at the end of the day, how wars end is clearly more consequential how they began. And at the end of the day, Iran, despite having been hit by 13,000 attacks from the U.S. Air power and Army HIMARS rockets and Navy ships, at the end of the day, Iran still has surrogate forces that are unreconciled and still a threat to both Israel and the United States interests, with no clear end to it in sight. At some point, I assume there'll be some kind of a universal ceasefire. The Iranians have got to lift the economic blockade. 98% of their oil goes out to the Strait of Hormuz. They're scrambling to find other ways to do it. They're not going to be able to survive probably beyond 90 days. So we got to get a ceasefire. But I think got to add one comment. President Trump's public utterances of threats and blood-curdling, findings on attacking Iran are killing his negotiators. You can't threaten people in public. You can't demean them. You can't call for, surrender and call for the U.S. selecting the next Iranian leadership without harming your own ability to end the war. So they've got to reset the game here and get the war stopped.
Yeah, I'm hearing you say that there has to be a way for Iran to save face, and by just continuing to give no inch to Iran publicly, that makes it difficult to find some common ground. Barry McCaffrey, General, thank you. And Zaman Rashid, appreciate your ongoing tireless reporting. You're doing great work out there, my friend. Up next, a red washout, how Tennessee Republicans are racing to wipe out the state's last Democratic House seat before the midterms. And later, how millions of Americans and vulnerable Republican lawmakers are reacting to sky-high gas prices.
Sky-high gas prices, imagine that. That's going to affect the hotel industry, that's going to affect the vacation industry, that's going to affect everything. What they have done, this is my opinion, what that they have done in the past 30 plus years, they have set up these Atlantic and Pacific alliances on false pretenses pertaining to trying to go in and strong arm other countries in cooperating and participating the same way that we do, pertaining to how our governments over here run the show, that we got our example from over in Greece and over in other parts of the country. Rome and Greece and the middle, pertaining to how that they voted in and voted out people. It's difficult to take something that people has been accustomed to and change it overnight. It's kind of like whenever Russia finally did tear down the Berlin Wall and basically declared bankruptcy on itself. Those people had been adjusted to being ordered in what to do and how to do for so long of a period of time that whenever Russia finally did give their citizens a bit of freedom, they didn't know what to do with it. They actually did not know how to run their own lives pertaining to building and working and establishing, pertaining to profit, pertaining to being self-reliant. So whenever you're dealing with culture differences like this, it's very difficult in doing this, especially when doing it simply all by force. I think that no matter who Donald Trump is at the end of the day, he will agree that diplomacy is always a much better avenue to go down rather than go down the war of strong army pertaining to war. I got a proposal. I know that my American government ain't going to like it, but I'm going to propose it anyway. I'm going to propose back to where that they were saying all or none pertaining to the boats coming in. If all of them can't come down the strip of Hormuz without any type of hesitation, then none of them should be allowed to go in. Well, I feel the same way with the nuclear armament. If one country ain't allowed to have nuclear armament based upon certain guidelines, based upon the criteria that even Obama presented towards having our inspectors there while they was building it and doing what they was doing, if all can't have a nuclear bomb that desires a nuclear bomb, well then nobody should have a nuclear bomb. That means to desecrate all your nuclear bombs. This has got to be the most craziest thing in the whole entire world, is to build self-destructing mechanisms that will take out not just your enemy, but take out yourself. That's got to be, that's following the protocol of what the Lucifer done pertaining to going up against the kingdom of God. Why would you want to go up against something that you know is much more powerful than you to begin with? So, that's just a proposal. I don't know how far to go. I don't know if it'll go. But the fact of the matter is, I've already offered a proposal pertaining to hand-to-hand combat and going to war with the great Satan over there, that apparently he don't think enough of his own people that's willing to sit down and do the same thing. So there you go there. So, when you be talking about a standoff, this is a standoff between good versus evil, evil versus good. It's the same kind of standoff that began thousands of years ago that never had really come to a final conclusion yet. But it will. I promise you, it will. Especially whenever you're talking about affecting this many people's lives, because we're all entangled in a little bitty planet now because of the internet. And what goes on one side of the planet is going to affect the other side of the planet. Just like if they have major droughts over in Europe pertaining to the agriculture communities, that's going to raise the prices over here in America because of the marketing going on, because they know that they ain't going to have near the supply over in Europe because they went through a bad drought. We live on a very, very small, big continent now because of the internet, and people need to awaken to that.
That has been a top concern. So there are many people you hear behind me now.
And what are you hearing from them as you discuss these matters with voters?
Well, for one, they're frustrated that they weren't giving the opportunity to weigh in. One of the Democratic proposals that was shot down during this special session was for a public comment period. That wasn't allowed. They're frustrated that there was rules proposed, for instance, that if any of these protesters were inside of a hearing as one was taking place and were disruptive, they would be barred from returning for the duration of the special session. The biggest sense of frustration is just the lack of input that they've been allowed to have. I also want to play for you, though, conversations I've had with some Republicans who are upset, particularly one I spoke to yesterday that pointed out with the design of these maps, we're taking a community like Memphis, predominantly black, more of an urban area, and forcing a congressional representative that will have to cater to those needs as well as the needs of people 100 miles away in more rural, farm-based communities. I want to play for you that point, and this, so you can get a sense of some of the frustration among Republicans as well. Take a listen.
The needs of a city like Memphis is very different from the needs of a rural county. So you're going to have a congressional representative that is basically fighting on two ends to try and represent everybody. As a Republican, and core to the Republicans is believing in small government. So when the federal administration has their fingers in every single aspect, including the very basic drawing of congressional lines, that is not small government. That is not on the local level. And every single Republican should be upset with that.
So as state House representatives are currently having their floor session, the state Senate's going to begin theirs in just a couple of minutes, and in a couple hours, Governor Bill Lee could be presented with that new map that would eliminate the lone Democratic district in the state and split Memphis, the predominantly black city in this state, into 3 districts that would likely again be represented by a Republican.
Nnamdi Agbanwu, thank you. And the people are making their voices heard, certainly. Philip, this new map, if passed, would be the first since last week's Supreme Court ruling limiting the use of race in redistricting, but it is not likely to be the last. What do you expect to see in the next few months?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think it's important to recognize what's happening here, which is essentially that there have been concerns by Republicans, including the president, for more than a year now about what's going to happen in the midterm elections. They're trying to backstop the power that they have by creating more Republican seats. So this Supreme Court decision, the Cali decision, is being used to some extent as a pretext to build more Republican seats. We saw explicitly happening in Florida, where Florida, even before the Cali decision, was saying, well, because of this issue of race, we need to redraw all of our lines. I think that we can expect to see this happening more, particularly in southern states where there had been the Voting Rights Act had been particularly targeted when it was first passed for obvious reasons. It was still the tail end of the Jim Crow era. So I think we can expect to see a lot more of that, particularly as the midterms approach. And honestly, I think it's short-sighted because I think that the terrain for the midterms still favors the Democrats. And what that means is that potentially next year, Tennessee is not going to have a voice in the majority of the House because there will be no Democratic representatives representing the state.
That's an interesting way to sort of reframe this situation specifically in Tennessee. Democrats have pointed out that Tennessee's Supreme Court in April 2022 rejected a challenge to the current congressional map, finding it was too close to the election to make changes. Here we are in May already. Wouldn't this fall along that same logic? What is this going to mean for voters on Election Day?
Yeah, I mean, one would assume so. We've already seen, though, in Louisiana, for example, there's an effort to actually stop voting in order to redraw the maps. What does it mean for Election Day remains to be seen. I think that there's probably going to be more of a backlash than people are anticipating. I think that the point that was just raised, for example, about how legislators will basically have to choose between the interests of rural areas and urban areas, I think we can understand what that means, and I think that will encourage a lot of people to come out and vote. You know, a lot of these districts are also being redrawn so that it would take a big wave election for Republicans to lose the seats. Well, this may be a big wave election as well. So we'll have to see how it unfolds. There may be the case that we're sort of in this initial rush and some of it may not come to fruition. But we also risk just seeing this sort of homogeneity of partisanship in states, right? Like, we have the Senate. The Senate is already, like, you just have 2 people and they represent the whole state. The House is meant to represent the diversity within a state. And I don't mean racial diversity, I mean the diversity of opinions. And we're seeing a move away from that. And I think that's damaging to the country for the long run as well.
Philip Bunk, as always, thank you for your insight and analysis. Up next, what our legal experts have learned from a purported Epstein suicide note released by a federal judge. And next hour, a deeper dive on the dangerous and deadly hantavirus that left a cruise ship and its passengers stranded.
While I was sitting there watching all that commotion going on up at the Capitol, I was thinking to myself, I couldn't mention the times that I've been in that Capitol, either conducting business or passing out material or voicing my opinion or just basically going in there just to look at some of their Christmas decorations. I went in there one year wearing a Santa Claus suit. It's really a disturbing thing whenever you have one party that wants to strong arm the other party to the degree that it wants to cut that party completely out and not even having a voice, because like the woman said, the needs of the people in Memphis are going to be different than the needs of the people in your rural county areas, such as Brownsville or Jackson or Savannah or Martin or Union City. The needs of the people in Humphreys County are going to be different than the needs of the people in Nashville, Tennessee. Everything is set up on different levels pertaining to cost, how people live, how they have to fluctuate and going to work and coming back home, and etc. This is all in correspondence with what prophecy talks about, that in the last days that there will be uprisings, there will be commotions, there will be wars and rumors of wars, there will be people that can't get along and won't get along. You keep in mind that Jesus said, and this is another area that the Pope really needs to look at as well as the President, Jesus said that he did not come to bring peace, but he come to bring a division amongst brother against sister, father against mother, family against family. This is where people such as the Pope and Donald Trump and myself and any other minister or preacher, a representative of the kingdom of God, has to step in and say, we're not Jesus. We are an advocate for Jesus through peace, and that's our main goal, is so that everybody can get along. And that's the reason why the Father put in there through Christ to let the wheat grow with the tares until time of harvest. Until time of harvest. And that's what I continued to was saying even back whenever Obama was president, that it got to the point that the Christians had no say-so at all over here, to the degree that anti-Semitism was growing in leaps and bounds, that if you even had a lascivity scene out in your yard, much less out at the church somewhere, you was prone to being persecuted by the public because you had baby Jesus out there with Mother Mary and Joseph representing the Lord Christ. Let them grow together until time of harvest. This is where the satanic kingdom has got the cart in front of the horse in trying to dictate to the Christians before it was time for them to dictate to the Christians. They wanted to take us out. They wanted to take me out. Whenever I moved back here in 2014, my brother and I went through absolutely hell. I'd never went through any type of hell like I'd went through here. And we know the law. We know how far that we could go. We was begging for the law to help us, and the law wouldn't help us. Oh, they heard a couple of the stories, but they compromised. Why would a man, even though he owned a piece of property across the road over here, what gave him the right to drive up and down the road 25 times a day, screaming and hollering and cussing at my brother and I, and calling us all kinds of names and making all kinds of fake accusations? If that's not disturbing the peace, I don't know what is. I don't care if you owned the property all the way around me, in which they don't. They just owned one piece of property across the road. But what gives you the right to come over here and disturb my peace? You don't. So who was initiating the war? They was. because every time we stood in front of the judge, the incident happened right here at either 291 Thompson Road or 430 Beach Grove Road. Every time.
Note reads in part, they investigated me, found nothing. Epstein died by suicide in his Manhattan jail cell a month later in August of 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin is joining us with more. And we should note, Lisa, MS Now has not independently authenticated that this note was in fact written by Jeffrey Epstein. But tell us more about what it says and how it was discovered.
So first of all, the note was discovered by a man named Nicholas Tartaglione. He was Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate for a period of time in the Metropolitan Correctional Center, where Epstein was held without bail after he was indicted in July of 2019. Tartaglione says he found it following what was said to be an initial suicide attempt by Jeffrey Epstein on July 23rd. He found it in a graphic novel, he says, and he took it to immunize himself or insulate himself from accusations that he was the one who killed Jeffrey Epstein. He says that Epstein initially, and this is substantiated in reports by the Justice Department, initially after that first suicide attempt, when Epstein was questioned about it, he said his cellmate had tried to assault him. And so Tartaglione, his story is that he took it for his own protection. The rest of the note says things like, it is a treat to be able to choose one's own time to say goodbye. What you want me to do, bust out crying, no fun, not worth it. It's not clear whether, of course, as you said, this was written by Jeffrey Epstein, but Tartaglione says that he took this note and then it was sealed in his own criminal case. Tartaglione has since been convicted of a quadruple homicide. He is appealing his conviction currently, but it has been under seal since 2021 in his own criminal case in the Southern District of New York.
Interesting. So how does it fit into any Epstein investigation at this point? Certainly there have been conspiracy theories about Epstein's death.
There are lots of theories about Epstein's death that have been investigated both by the FBI and the Department of Justice's Office of Inspector General. But there are multiple discrepancies surrounding the night he died. And I'll just list a couple of them. Epstein was found by the Bureau of Prisons to need a cellmate. He did not have a cellmate overnight on the evening that he died. His former cellmate was transferred away. That was not Tartaglione. It was somebody else. There's also discrepancies, as you know, with video evidence outside the specialized housing unit where he was held. There are multiple other issues about that evening that have all been documented, but no one has conclusively been able to say that Jeffrey Epstein did not commit suicide. That was the conclusion of the Department of Justice.
That's right. Thank you so much, Lisa Rubin, for bringing that to us. Right now, in a federal court in Washington, arguments are underway in Senator Mark Kelly's legal showdown with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. A 3-judge appeals panel is weighing whether Hegseth acted unlawfully when he tried to cut Kelly's naval rank and retirement pay for recording a video reminding service members that they are required to refuse unlawful orders. A lower court has already ruled in Kelly's favor. We'll continue to follow this case and bring you the very latest. Up next, high gas prices putting Republican lawmakers on edge, how they're changing their tune. And next hour, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, a possible 2028 Democratic presidential hopeful, speaks to our Ali Vitale about his party's potential path to success.
You know, it shouldn't be about parties. It should be about the whole. And that's where both parties have gotten stray. Is it should be for the benefit of everybody and not just one particular party. And that's where your democracy over here has gotten off the beaten path whenever it comes to true democracy. We today fight for the party more so we do for the group. And it's not supposed to be that way. We're supposed to be fighting for the group in the party that we're in, and then it's supposed to be decided upon the group in which party that they want to put in play, because they have made commitments of getting us out of the problems that we're in. That's one of the reasons why we're in the problem that we're in, is because we thought more of the party than we did the group. It's a sad state of affairs. And as I said a while ago, Jesus said that he did not come to bring peace, but division. Well, I'm not Jesus. The Pope isn't Jesus. Any other preacher that you hear standing up representing the kingdom of God is not Jesus. We only represent Jesus. We only represent the teachings of Jesus. And in doing so, we're supposed to let the wheat grow with the tares. We're supposed to let the sheep grow with the goats. We're supposed to get along down here. And once it reaches a level that we can't get along down here, that's whenever the Father will step in and put an end to it. And if that's the direction that people want to go in, we'll continue to keep doing what you're doing, because I guarantee you, you're rubbing up against it. You're tickling it right now. If we can't come together in making decisions for ourselves to the degree that everybody gets along, it's very obvious that what's going on right now in the strip over there is affecting the whole world. It ain't just affecting one or two groups of people. It's affecting everybody on the planet. So that definitely needs to be worked out some way or another on a diplomatic degree. In the meantime, the time has come for Satan to surrender, the great Satan, and for him to put his material and his immaterial weapons down. No questions asked. No questions asked. The time has come. Ain't that right? Ain't that right, Jackie Smacky? Huh? Ain't that right, Jackie Smacky boy? Huh? You just want to dance, don't you? Huh? You just want to dance. Get on over. Get on over. I'll get over in a minute. I'm going to turn this off. God bless America. God bless our troops. And God bless our endeavors for which way that we go from here. And good luck to all of us. Shalom.